Great. All right. So we like to start off these meetings by just acknowledging the lands upon which we're meeting today. For most of us, we're on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Yuchi, the Osage, the Shawnee, and the Cherokee peoples. And if you would like to learn more about the original stewards and caretakers of the land you call home, there's this really great resource and website, and I'll put that in the chat right now. It's called Native Land Digital, and it's native-land.ca as the URL, but you can click that there in the chat to access that yourself. So just a quick look at our agenda today and what we'll be getting into. I'm going to briefly share some things about our vision for this group and our learning pathways. And then we'll get right into our topic of digital accessibility with our fabulous guest speaker for the day. And then we'll have time for questions and some discussion at the end before we wrap it all up. All right, so like Roberta said, some of you all are new, and we are so glad that you're here with us today. And we just want to share a little bit about our vision. And mainly, we want you to know that we're a learning community. We're working to foster and support practices of racial justice, equity, inclusion, and diversity in the outdoors and in environmental work and education. The community of practice is hosted by the Kentucky Association for Environmental Education. As an organization and as co-facilitators, we don't pretend to have answers to everything, and that's exactly why we call this a community of practice. This is a place to learn from each other and with each other. We want to grapple with inequities that exist in our field, and we want to practice dialogue around these topics with honesty and empathy. So we just keep those in mind as we move forward. And then we also have these things that we call learning pathways, which are more traditionally known as like objectives. There are learning objectives for as we move through this journey together. So the first thing we want to do is really increase our vocabulary, be able to talk about things like this more. We want to engage across human differences in a manner that honors and values agreeing both, that honors and values both agreeing and disagreeing. And then, of course, embrace our overall racial diversity and belonging journey. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jackie, who's going to introduce our guest speaker for the day.
Oh, so it's my pleasure to introduce my co-facilitator, Roberta Burns, who is presenting today. She is a cornerstone of Kentucky environmental education with a rich history of contributions to the field. She has worked with numerous non-formal organizations, served on the KAE board, and now co-facilitates this COP. What truly sets Roberta apart is her unwavering integrity and courage. She is a true upstander, always ready to raise her voice in defense of our planet and in pursuit of justice for those in need. True to form, today she's presenting on a topic that is often overlooked, digital accessibility. So with that, I'll turn it over to my wonderful co-facilitator, Roberta.
Awesome. And I'm going to stop my share. So Roberta, you can take it from here.
Jackie, thank you for that introduction. You kind of almost made me get a little teary. You're so sweet.
Oh
my gosh. Okay, so let me figure out this sharing thing here and hope that I share the correct screen and hit the share button. All right. Y'all see my slide?
Looks great.
Great. Let me see if I can put my chat over on the side. I think I'm going to minimize that for now. Okay, great. All right. Thank you so much for having me today. We are going to try to whiz through a lot of content in a short time. And this is just an introduction to a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. The goals today are to really try to identify what it is that I'm talking about with accessible digital design. Talk about expanding our vocabulary. You're going to do that today. You're going to get a little practice making accessible social media posts, learn a little bit about some of the real easy things you can do to make your Word documents more accessible. And I'm going to leave you with some great resources to learn more. We are going to share this PowerPoint with you. I believe we are going to post it on the website, and you'll have access to all the links that are embedded in here. Keep in mind, it is an introduction. I do have some hidden slides that I'm not going to share today that you'll have access to inside the PowerPoint when you get it. All right, so do you practice inclusive design? Are your PowerPoints and documents and socials accessible to people who use accessible technology, like this guy here who's using a puff and suck straw to actually control his computer so that he can navigate through a website? Or this gentleman here who is listening to a website being read through an assistive technology called a screen reader. Or this person who is not able to hear very well, so uses captions to watch videos. Accessibility matters for a lot of reasons. First of all, in Kentucky, the last number that I've been able to find is over 140,000 people in Kentucky who self-report blindness or severe visual impairment. Now, that's just one type of disability, but accessible content on the web is important for people who have other kinds of disabilities as well. They may be physically impaired and be unable to use a keyboard to navigate web content, or they may have audio impairment and need those captions. Web and document accessibility is also the law. Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act covers a lot of this, but I will mention that Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the famous ADA, was just recently updated, like at the end of June. And it is going to kick in with requirements that will apply to state and local governments to make sure that their web content is accessible to everyone. Those timelines are fairly short. If you aren't doing this stuff now, if you're not doing this work now, you only have a couple of years to comply. So it's important to remember it's the right thing to do, but it's also the law. There are so many different technologies that allow people today to access website information and social media. And this is just a list of a few of them: screen readers and Braille keyboards and refreshable Braille displays, which are these magical things that actually cause that web content to flow underneath a person's fingertips as Braille, and they can read it in that way. And then there's all kinds of devices that allow people to use their eyes or their breath to navigate a computer's controls. Accessible content is essential for some, but it's good for everybody. For one thing, it loads faster and better on mobile devices. If you use words, styles, or headings, then you've just made it easier to navigate through any document for anyone. Closed captioning is super convenient when I'm watching a video at work and I don't want to disturb my coworkers. I don't have a good headset. I just turn on that closed captioning. It's convenient, right? Including things like alternative text for images means that if you're using, maybe you're on limited data plan and you're using your phone and you've turned images off, you've got that alt text which describes the image that you cannot see. So there are lots of good reasons for using and creating accessible content. Today, I'm going to focus on this thing called alt text or alternative text on images. We're going to get a little practice on that. Some of the other things I'll talk about is avoiding pictures with words in your social media, using those heading styles that are built into Microsoft products, being very careful with how you use color to convey information, and a couple of other things towards the end of the presentation. But let's begin with this thing called alt text. Now, some of you may be familiar with this. You may have heard of it. It is not something that folks who access web content with their eyeballs generally notice. Although, if you are on some social media platforms like Twitter, X, or Blue Sky, you might notice little tiny ALT in the corner of some images. That's what we're talking about. Think of alt text as a caption written on the back of a picture that tells you what's going on in that picture. It is the way that people using excessive technology can connect to the meaning of a picture if they cannot see the picture. And so unless your image is purely just for pretty decoration, if it's conveying any kind of information, it should always have alt text associated with it. It's super easy to add alt text in Microsoft products like Word and PowerPoint. In this image, I have a screenshot of a picture in a report, and all you have to do is right-click on that image, and down towards the bottom, there is a little choice that says View Alt Text. When you click on that, a little window pops out, and you can write your alt text in there. It should be a description that conveys the meaning of that image. By the way, every image in this PowerPoint has alt text associated with it. You can't see it right now, but when you get the PowerPoint, you can right-click on an image and view the alt text to see how I chose to describe these images. Make sure to include alt text on your socials too. You don't know who out there is learning from your social media content and enjoying it, or could be learning and enjoying it. And without that alt text, you are missing some of your audience. I should have put Blue Sky on here. I recently switched from X to Blue Sky, which is another social media platform. And all of these like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn allow you to do alt text. These are two examples of posts that I made. Most of my posts tend to be about baking or fungi. I don't know. That's just me. I'm kind of weird. So this slide is just a delightful infographic that really, I keep this next to my desk. This reminds me how to write good alt text. And if you can't see this image, for you're listening to this presentation later, it's a lovely photograph of a capybara, which I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name of this adorable little rodent correctly, looking relaxed in a hot spa. Yellow yuzu fruits are floating in the water, and one is balanced on top of the capybara's head. So that would be a great example of a good alt text description of that picture. You want to identify who or what, any expression or feeling about that picture, a good description. If color is important, it's okay to mention color and any interesting features. One last thing, you never need to say this is a picture of, or an image of, or a chart of. Just get straight to the information and be as succinct as possible. All right, so I'm going to give you a chance here right now to think about what alt text you would write to describe this picture. What if you have this picture on your website, for instance, and a person who can't see simply sees it as a blank image? What alt text would you write? Please put it in the chat. And then we'll, if you are listening to this presentation later and you cannot see this picture, we are going to describe it in just a moment. I haven't seen anything in the chat yet. Maybe Yep, there we go. Thank you, Brittany. All right. I love it. Great. These are great examples of alt text. Yeah. I like, so we're going to read a few of these for folks who are not able to see the chat later. 2 students examine a jar containing water and organisms held by an educator. Another one says a scientist standing in the water shows a water sample to 2 young scientists taking notes. Educator or scientist showing pond creatures in a jar to 2 students with clipboards. A man kneeling in water showing 2 note-taking female students a jar with water in it. I love these. Jackie's got a lovely word, curiously. 2 young women and a man looking curiously at a jar of pond water. So you've conveyed some expression or meaning there. A man wearing waders in a stream showing a jar of greenish water to 2 young women. Lots of good examples of alt text. This is great practice. 2 students hold and take notes and observe a specimen in a jar from an educator, and 2 students observing pond water held in a jar held by an educator. Great. So these are really good examples. And this is the kind of practice that you want to do anytime you put an image on your website, anytime you use an image in social media. This is what you want to do. Add some descriptive alt text to tell people what is in that image. Incidentally, if you want to know if other people are putting alt text on their stuff on their websites, you can actually right-click on any website image and go all the way down to the word properties. And out will open this crazy box of bizarre HTML stuff that most of which you are not going to understand, but there's a little tiny accessibility tab and you can scroll down and see if there's accessibility alt text written in there or not. And I will tell you that there are an awful lot of websites that I go to on a regular basis that do not use alt text. All right, so let's talk about making your socials accessible. If you have your phone handy right now, I'm going to give you a moment to open up, if you are on either Facebook or Instagram, to find a picture that you have previously uploaded. Both Facebook and Instagram require you to add the alt text after you upload the image. With Facebook, you're going to click on the picture, look for 3 dots in the upper right corner, and then choose Edit Alt Text. In my memory, Facebook and Instagram sometimes will provide you with AI generated alt text. It's often extremely inaccurate or missing altogether. With Instagram, you will do something similar. You will click on your picture, click on the 3 dots in the upper right corner and choose Edit. But then here's where I got lost the last couple of times that I tried to do it. I forgot that on Instagram, you have to go then to the little box in the lower right corner of your picture that says Edit Alt Text. And then your little window will pop up and you can edit that alt text. while you're practicing that, I will just, and if you're not practicing it, that's okay, but give it a try if you got your phone handy. I will mention that on Facebook and Instagram, you are the only one that can see your alt text intentionally unless another user has their images turned off, then the alt text will appear, or if they're using assistive technology. Now, Twitter and Blue Sky, if a person has added alt text, you will see a little box in the lower right corner of the image that says ALT. And you should click on that and see what people are writing for their alt text. My favorite person on social media is somebody who is called Surprised Eel Historian. He is a surprised eel historian on Blue Sky. And yes, that is exactly what he is. And all he writes about is the history of hunting and eating eels in the Middle Ages in England. Pretty crazy, but man, his alt text is just perfect. It is so wonderful. So I'm curious to see anybody successful adding alt text in their socials. Just maybe do a thumbs up. Yep, or something in the chat. Good. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the chat real quick here. And yes, and I wondered if this would come up. Kayla asks, what is the best practice when using gender terms if it is not explicitly necessary to the context? Really good question. A lot of people are asking about this, and it's a good question for our community of practice as well. Ashley says, I believe you should remember gender terms wherever possible. Use words like students, educator, scientist, better than making assumptions of gender, and the same applies for inferring race or ethnicity, which is very easy, yes. And when I use alt text on my socials, and if I am describing myself, if I identify as a white woman, I am going to put that in my alt text, but that's me. But I might not do that with other people because I don't know how they identify. So thank you for asking that question, and thank you for weighing in on that. That's excellent. All right, we're going to move on. So I have a friend who works in state government, and she said to me one day that if there was one thing she wished people would do, it was to stop using pictures with words. Stop hiding important information inside pictures with words. All the important information in this image here is hidden. The social media post simply says, join us Saturday at the Bon Air Library to learn about food waste. If you're listening to this presentation later and you cannot see that image, that's all you get. Okay, there was no alt text to describe the image, but the image itself contains dates and times and locations and contact information, but that was not in the post and it was not in the alt text. So please, 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 for the sake of your customers, your clients, your users, your students, make sure that you don't bury that important information inside an image that will be read out loud as blank image to somebody using a screen reader. Give them something. I pulled this off of our own Energy and Environment Cabinet social media feed from last January. This is an important announcement about a grant workshop that contains hyperlink to a website, and it contains dates and times and locations for these grant workshops. The post itself simply says 2024 Abandoned Mine Lands Economic Revitalization Applications accepted during these dates. Staff are available to assist. See below, meaning the image, for dates and times. There was no alt text attached to this image and no information within the post that described even a hyperlink to get more information. It simply referenced an image with information hiding inside. Please be careful about doing that in your social media posts and your website. Okay, we're going to whiz through the last couple of things here. These are just tips that really do help for people using, navigating your documents and using assistive technology. Use those heading styles. You know, for years, I thought heading styles was Microsoft's way of saying, hey, I know better than you do about how pretty your documents should look. Well, that's actually not what it's about. It's about making your documents easy to navigate with hierarchical headings. And it's really very important. Imagine trying to read a newspaper with no headings at all, just tiny little text. And you would be kind of lost if you wanted to quickly go to a particular section of the newspaper to find a particular story. As you're using these headings, just make sure to follow the logical order of document structure with, you know, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Don't skip heading numbers as you're doing it. But this is a really great tool to use that makes your documents more useful for everybody. By the way, adding extra spaces between lines of text, it's really obnoxious to somebody using a screen reader, which will literally yell out loud, space, 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 for every single return you've hit on your document. So try to use the embedded formatting of these styles or create your own within those styles by modifying them rather than adding lots of extra returns or spaces. Color is something you want to be very careful of. 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women. This is a statistic that I found on the CDC's website. And no, I'm sorry, the other one. I'm not able to see my notes right now, but this is how many people have some sort of color deficiency. So in Kentucky, about 350,000 Kentuckians have some sort of something that we would traditionally call color blindness. It doesn't mean that if you're red-green colorblind that you can only not distinguish between red and green. It means that if a color contains red or green in any aspect, that it's that bit of that color is going to be difficult for you to distinguish. So avoid using those colors together in charts or text. Never use color as the sole means of conveying information. Give people other visual cues besides color. And here's a great example. So in this image, the left image is a chart that I made for an annual report back in 2019. And I just, I thought the green and the purple lines were pretty, and I did not realize that they would not have passed a color and contrast checker. They're actually quite similar in hue for a lot of people. And so one way that you can make it better and give people more visual cues is to change the shape of the markers on the lines. I have been noticing this a lot lately with board gaming. Board games are starting to use symbols as well as colors for the individual players' pieces so that they can identify and find their pieces and distinguish them from other people's pieces on the board. Those shapes, those symbols, as well as the color are very important because color deficiency is quite common. Be careful about color contrast as well. This is a picture that shows great examples of good and bad contrast. The bottom line is that black on white or navy blue on white are always best. And there are free color contrast analyzers out there that you can download and use that will enable you to test your content before you post it to the web and make sure that it passes the test. How many of you have put in a post or a document, click here? Click here, is I see it everywhere. But that is considered kind of a no-no because click here does not tell you where here is. It is much better to hyperlink the description of where they're going. And for example, if I want you to go to EPA's indoor air quality website, I'm going to say, visit EPA's indoor air quality website to learn more. And then I will hyperlink the words EPA's indoor air quality website. That is where I will put the link. When you hover over it, you will see the URL, but that's not important to most people. They want to know where they're going when they click on a link, and that enables them to make a choice before they click here, right? And then the last little tip I'm going to give you here is adding a document title. It is not the same as a file title, the name of your actual file. A document title is something that is used by accessible technology to identify what this thing is. And it's easy to do, but it's easy to miss. It's in the info section of your Word document. There's a little box there. Microsoft Word does not prompt you to do this, so you have to go looking for it. I suggest, and most people will suggest, to make that title as simple as possible. State workers are very proud of their long document names with dates and the person who created them all in there with underscores. Make that document title as simple as possible and get rid of all that extraneous stuff. The nice thing is Office has built-in accessibility checkers. Every Office product has them, and they're easy to use. You can keep them open when you're working in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, and you can use them to make sure that you're adding alt text as you go, that you have all the text in the right order to be read correctly in a PowerPoint slide or whatever. So use those checkers. And there's tons of great resources out there. These are my top favorite ones. They are hyperlinked in the PowerPoint, so you'll be able to find their URLs easily. Minnesota Office of Accessibility does free trainings online. You can access them from that website. Poet Training Tool is free training for writing good alt text. Accessibility Matters is my go-to for quick, easy infographics on how to make my PowerPoint accessible, or how to make a good accessible Word document, or color and contrast. Accessible Social is a blog article that covers how to make your socials accessible. And WebAIM is pretty much the gold standard for all things in terms of web accessibility. And it has pretty much all of the standards, but it is easy to go down a rabbit hole there. So, start with the low-hanging fruit. And my motto is we can always do better when it comes to making our content accessible. So with that, I am going to stop sharing, and we will see if anybody is a little overwhelmed or has any questions or anything like that.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Roberta. I learned a lot just now, things I had not really considered. I do have a question about, do you know if the Google Suite also has like accessibility checking and alt text capabilities?
I don't use Google very often, but I guarantee you there's going to be a way to add alt text to images in Google, and there should be other things as well that that ensure that people can navigate through documents using screen readers. That's a really good question. Now I'm going to have to go look. So, yeah.
I'm in Google right now. If I click on an image, if I right click it, it says alt text. So,
Fantastic.
Okay.
can you explain a little more about the click here versus like how is that different from hyperlinking the word, the EPA, air quality monitor thing? How do they know to
They,
click that but not to click here?
right. So one thing you can say in the descriptive text is whether they're going to a website or whether they're going to a document. They may not want to open a document on their phone, for instance, because it goes straight to downloads or something. My phone is set up that way. So by describing exactly where they're going, they can make that choice to go to that website, to navigate somewhere else, or to open a document, or to stay where they are and maybe come back to it later and open up that document on a desktop computer where they can view it properly or something like that. So it provides them with a better choice than the click here is almost like the big red button where people are just going to push it and then they might regret it later because they're like, oh, wait. Oh, I lost where I was and I'm not sure where I'm going. So it is considered a best practice. It's most accessibility websites will say try to use that descriptive text.
So instead of saying like learn more, you would just hyperlink like what the actual event is in the text.
Yeah, you could say learn more at, you know, our conference website, you know, and then you would hyperlink conference website or something or web page or something like that. It's okay to say learn more or find out more, but try to hyperlink the description of where they're headed.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nicole typed into the chat, thank you so much for this information. Do you have any advice on how to be accessible when obtaining user information such as a landing page or newsletter sign up?
How to be accessible when obtaining user information. Nicole, you could feel free to unmute if you want to explain a little bit more about what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. I'm sorry, I look a mess today. That's why I'm not on camera.
It's
Um,
okay.
but in terms of like sending out newsletters, landing pages where users have to input their information to become a part of a list or something larger or to become part of a communication pool,
Mhm.
what do you think is the best way to be accessible?
Now you're sort of venturing into an area that I'm not as informed about. So that would be website design, and hopefully the your website has some built-in features like sign-ups and things like that that are going to be accessible to somebody simply using, the tab key or the arrow keys on their keyboard rather than a mouse, for instance. So I know that accessible forms should be easily tabbable or arrow stepped through in the right order. Websites, I feel like unless you're operating a very old website on a very old, outdated platform, should have some built-in features that will be accessible to somebody when they step to that box to fill their information in. A screen reader should be able to call that out to them and tell them exactly what is required. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I am only familiar with one website platform, SharePoint, and even that not so much from the back end design aspect. Sorry.
No, thank you. I thought that that was a great answer.
What about email signatures like logos? Would you suggest? I just looked up and there is an alt text option there. So I'm assuming that would be a great place to do that as well for logos.
Yeah, alt text on logos is great. And if you use logos in your documents and stuff, I would generally describe it as, such and such as logo. Sometimes when it appears, there have been a couple of times when there's been an entire page full of different things that might be considered logos. And sometimes I get exhausted and I click decorative if I don't think it's important, if it's not conveying important information. But yeah, if you're putting out something with your logo on it or your email signature, then it's easy to add the alt text that says, University of Kentucky logo or University of Kentucky Department of blah, blah, blah logo or something like that.
I have a quick question. Well, maybe not quick, but I have a question about PDFs.
Yeah.
So I make our newsletter, and I make it on Canva and then save it as a PDF and then also images. And I embed the images on our website, but link the PDF. But so Berea College has a program that checks accessibility that I got from the office of or the disability office. And I tried to use it and it was like the least intuitive thing I've ever done. So I haven't had the chance to like really sit down and learn that. And so in the meantime, I was like, would it be good to kind of put the whole newsletter as alternative text underneath?
No.
So if
It's a good question, though.
And now with your point about the headings on Microsoft Word and something, I'm wondering if that would be beneficial to kind of make a simplified newsletter in Word to also post.
You nailed it, Kayla.
Okay.
Thank you for asking this question. Canva does not really work for accessibility right now currently. It is great for people who can see, and it can create beautiful infographics. But as a means of producing a newsletter, the text in Canva, I have been unable to make PDFs from Canva accessible without a lot of head banging against the wall and a lot of work. And I will tell you, to be fair, Kayla, making a PDF accessible is something I have been working on trying to figure out for years, and I can do the top couple of levels. But if you really want to make a PDF 100% accessible, it's really important to start with an accessible document first. And a Canva document is not, unfortunately, an accessible document. If you made your newsletter in Word and did your accessibility check prior to PDFing, then that PDF is going to be a long way closer to being 100% accessible, if not 100%, depending on how complex your newsletter is. But that is why I this year for my annual report, I've just switched to Word. It's just so much easier. I have the peace of mind knowing that when I am done with this Word document and I turn it into a PDF, if I've done my homework on the front end by adding my alt text and using heading styles, it's going to be an accessible PDF. So yeah, that would be my advice. And then using Canva for those great infographics and adding good alt text to the back end, and or a description of the same information in some alternative fashion in addition to the infographic.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, and feel free to email me, Kayla, if you want to learn more about PDF accessibility. I'm happy to walk you through some of that stuff. Anyone else? I will say one other thing that we get a lot of in state government is scanned images of things. We like to scan letters and correspondence and various things and then bundle them all up together in a giant PDF and post them to the web. Scanned images are not going to be accessible either. And that's going to be an interesting hurdle for us to cross in a couple of years when we're try to figure out how we make these giant documents that have a lot of regulatory stuff more accessible to people. You can use optical character recognition, when you do your scan or within Adobe PDF, but it does require that full Adobe program to do it well, or some cheaper version. So a bit of a learning curve.
Well, if there are no other questions, we can wrap up. Thank you so much again, Roberta. Again, these are things I never thought of, so I really appreciate your interest in them, one, and then sharing all of your knowledge with us. It was great to see so many new people here. If you'd like to get more involved, there's more things coming up. So we also have a JEDI book club that meets monthly, I believe. And they're currently reading a book called Just Action: How to Challenge Segregation Enacted Under the Color of Law. And then our next COP, Community of Practice, is in October. And we're having guest speaker Olivia Grissett, who's the executive director of the Maine affiliate. And she actually spoke to us several years ago when we were first starting the JEDI Action Team, which is a group that came up with and started the COP. She talked to us then about what they're doing in Maine, and she's an excellent speaker. She's very interactive, and it was fascinating to hear about the work that they're doing in Maine on this type of thing: justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I invite you guys to come to that. I think it'll be wonderful. Thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.